Hello, everyone. Hello, Delphi community. Today, we have a guest, Andrea Magni, computer engineer, Delphi developer, and Embarcadero MVP. Andrea is an author of a book about Delphi. It's called Delphi GUI Programming with FireMonkey, Unleash the Full Potential of the FireMonkey Framework. As I know, it was written in 2020. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, Sergey.
And of course, I think if you attend any conferences in Europe about Delphi, or maybe you attend different online conferences, you have to know Andrea. I think he's very popular and famous person in Delphi development world. And I'm glad that Andrea is here today with us. Okay, and our today's subject is about, as we said, but maybe we did not say, it's about developing cross-platform mobile applications, or anyway, cross-platform applications. And Andrea is an expert, will share with us his experience, because I think that it's not easy to start developing cross-platform and especially mobile application if you are a Delphi developer with a huge experience, because the concept is different. Andrea, do you agree with me with that?
Yes, sure. The mobile development is a different game from desktop development, especially because of the UI and the way the user is using the software. It is not through a keyboard and a mouse, but it's mostly through a touch interface, and also the size of the screen of the display is different. We have a different fruition. It's not like you have many windows and the users can switch from one to the other. Usually you have a single view in front of the user, and the user should be simple. It's not with many fancy things that we are used to have in desktop applications. And the space is limited, the visual space is limited. So I really think that for developers to switch from desktop development to mobile development is a huge step.
Yeah, we can continue.
Yes, other problems are, apart from the UI, that obviously is a central part of a mobile application, as well as of a desktop one. You have to consider that mobile users are driven by conventions. So given the two main mobile platforms that are Android and iOS, the thing is that the user is not used to see too much differences across applications. I mean, if you are on an Android user, you expect the application to look and behave like an Android application. So you expect some conventions, visual conventions, and also behavior conventions. And the same applies to iOS. The two platforms tend to constantly diverge and then converge back again. So some conventions actually swapped from one side to the other. But the real thing is that this kind of experience that is convention-driven is something that you have to replicate in your own applications. I mean, if your application has a specific way to close the views or to select things from a list, the user will have to learn this new convention. So it's easier from a user experience point of view to keep the conventions that are already there in the user.
I want to add that here, it's more about materials of design and other concepts, and we will talk about them a little bit later, because I have like a lot of requests from the newbie cross-platform developers using FireMonkey. And so we have to split two things, I think, like what we have under the hood and UI. And if we even start with what do we have under the hood, sometimes Delphi developer even cannot correctly design navigation for the application. Because in our existing application, we have main form, we open in other forms, but with mobile application, it's totally different animal. When we have, it's not like open in one form, closing another, and opening another. Correct? And because that's the problem sometimes. Even we do not know how to start developing new application using FireMonkey. Of course, Embarcadero has a template for that, but the concept is totally different. Do you agree with this? Even with the architecture of the application.
Yes, also because I think many desktop developers are used to have modality. I mean, to have a main form and then have secondary forms that gets shown through a show modal call. And they expect the new form to act as a dialogue. So you have the form on the screen, you can do something. When it's closed, your actual code flow continues. While this assumption that is so common on desktop is not maintained on mobile platforms, where dialogues and all the new forms are not blocking. So if you call show modal, the immediately following instruction gets executed while your form is still on the screen. And that's something that most developers find a bit confusing at first. And you have to move your paradigm from a very imperative programming style to something that is more like event-driven, like show this dialogue and then do this other piece of code when it's closed or when it's canceled, I mean. So it is a completely new way of performing tasks. So the developer must understand that you may have things running not exactly in the sequence you wrote them. So it's a big change. It is more or less the same thing of going towards an asynchronous way of programming, where your code gets executed in response of events that gets fired. That's more or less the same experience. It is actually challenging to put everything together, because you can expect to show the user a selection dialog or the like, and you're actually expecting the selection to be applied only when the dialog closes, but it's not the case. It's different on mobile. Yes, I think that's another huge step. So different screen, different input ways, different synchronous, asynchronous behavior. Yes, it's.
What about architectural pattern which we can use for developing architecture of our application? Is it like what is the best ones, MVC or maybe MVVM?
Well, I'm not actually very prone to adapt to choose a single pattern. I mean, I tend to be quite pragmatic. So what I really like is to have my application divided into modules. So I tend to have data modules to hold data and application code. Then I tend to have a single main form, possibly as empty as it can. So it is just a scaffolding for the application. Then I tend to implement views that get shown on the main form when it's needed. And this view can be created on demand and destroyed as soon as they are no more needed. And this way of architecturing the application means you have data modules, one single main form, many frames or secondary forms, and you actually are automatically splitting your application modules, because given the standard mobile application is designed to be something very similar to a state machine. So it's going from view A to view B, then going back to view A. This can be done using a stack of views or having side views coming in and out of the main screen. And I really tend to have these things very well separated. The views usually knows the data modules, but not the other way around. And I tend to use messaging systems to keep things together, even if they are actually decoupled. So they communicate through messages, but they are not tied at the implementation level. So that's the general structure I tend to follow. And that I've seen that it's working, because I do consultancy as I'm a freelance, and many developers came to me at first with FireMonkey mobile applications already under development. And they tend to have many things on the main form, having a single main form with a lot of tab controls on it, nested tab controls. And that can be hard to maintain, because it is really slow at startup.
Okay, they just it's like a page controls, but they just hide the page, like all this, like how to say it, like squares for switching between the pages. But anyway, everything in one control, like a lot of components on the same floor, on the same tab, like page sheet component, something like that. Like on T-tab control, where everything is here. But okay.
Yes.
And about this concept, when we have almost empty main form, how we can build the correct application? Is it possible to do that, like using your products, your freeware framework, like component, TFrameStand, and FMXer?
TFrameStand was born exactly for that reason, to have a simple way to mediate a secondary view on the main form. So the problem, the very first problem that TFrameStand, that is a non-visual component and acts like a mediator of views, was to provide a way to show something that is like a splash screen, or is just a wait screen for the user, because on a mobile application, you have to keep the application very responsive. In a way, responsive, it's a very abused term, and it has different meanings. I'm using responsive here to say that the users always have to feel the application to be alive. So if I'm doing a long task, maybe using a secondary thread or a T-task, so I'm working on the background, the user interface should be alive, responding to user inputs, and possibly showing the user that something is going on. Otherwise, the user will simply terminate the application. So the very first demo of TFrameStand is a wait frame demo. So you can click on a button, start a background task, and in the meanwhile, have a different view showing a spinning gear in front of the user. So it's a way to say, hey, wait, I'm doing something, and also to provide some messages, some updates to the user about the operation running in the background. So that was the very first demo, the very first use case. But then I understood that that same mechanism of having a component providing an instance of a T-frame, descendant, whatever, was very useful also to build the navigation inside a mobile application.
Yeah, exactly.
Because at that time I could have
this is what is like a basics for any new mobile applications using FireMonkey.
Yes, I really think that that's a very simplifying approach, and it forces you to split your views into different frames. And also you have a chance to reuse frames or part of the frames because you can nest. You can use TFrameStand inside the frame and the like. So from this concept, at some point, I think the key point is to have something in code, in my case, in a non-visual component that mediates the UI composition. And also simplifies many other things. I could provide a way to intercept when the view is shown, when the view is hidden from the user. I managed to add support for transitions or effects. And that actually made building mobile application modern looking, very easy, and at the same time to achieve maintainability of the project, because you simply end up having several frames. Even if the application is complex, you can still focus on a single unit. It is also more version control friendly, because when you have a single form with many components and you have a team working on the application, they are fighting all the time with conflicts on the FMX file, the DFM correspondent, because FMX file as DFM files are not very version control friendly. And so splitting views also mean that developers can work on different views of the same project without having conflicts, reducing the risk of conflicts.
Yeah. And don't think about how to merge data module with all these properties for all these components. Am I correct that Delphi developer which want to start building a brand new mobile application using FireMonkey, he can take TFrameStand component and use it like a base for its future application, and it will save a lot of time for him?
Yes, I've read this statement many times on the internet. I mean, I knew other Delphi experts actually suggesting people to use TFrameStand. So a part of my customers that are actually using it, and I know directly, I've seen many other people also because of conferences. As you said, I like to join Delphi conferences where available. And I've seen a very good response about TFrameStand these years, because I think the first version was like in 2015. So it's like 7 years already.
Yeah. And what is it a main purpose of the TFrameStand component? Is like for these things like implementation of all these frames, management routines, background tasks, and maybe something else? What is most important features?
The most important feature is that using TFrameStand and going up one level using FMX, it's easier for developer to achieve and deliver visual consistency of mobile applications, of FireMonkey applications, especially mobile ones. But
In this case, you have mentioned FMXer. In this case, can you a little bit clarify what is the next step of TFrameStand? Where is it like?
Okay, so if you use FireMonkey, you can use it as it comes out of the box using forms and frames and the like. The first step is using TFrameStand and avoid having frame instances directly in place in the forms, in the FMX files, basically. So you can, that's the first step. Then if you look at the mobile development scenario, also in other technologies, there's a general shift towards a declarative approach in programming. For example,
you mean without programming, without writing a code using Object Pascal, for example?
I mean writing applications without using much the design time functionalities like the form designer or the drag and drop of components. So if you look at technologies like Google Flutter or Apple's Swift UI, you can recognize they are going in a different direction. That is basically, I can write my applications in code, nesting macro components and configuring them. So I'm basically writing the definition of my application, at least of the UI part of my application, by writing something that to a Delphi experienced developer looks like a DFM files with all the components nested in a hierarchy. But you're writing code. If you go back with the memories, this actually resembles a bit the times where Java developers were writing Swing applications by code, coding everything, like create this component has this width, this height, this background color, this event handler, for the event handler for this event, and the like. While the difference is that we are seeing that Flutter, Swift UI, and FMXer for Delphi developers is a different kind of programming. It's like, okay, my application is built of these routes, I mean, that is more or less like these views, and these views have a definition. The definition is the branch of a tree of components configured in code. For example, I can say I have a panel here. The panel inside has a label. There is a title that has this text. And the other concept behind this kind of programming is that components are no more very simple components. They are macro components. So it's unlikely you will see a label. It is more likely that you will think in terms of a column, a row, a card that has a title
like,
and can have
almost similar concept as FireMonkey, or for example, XAML files in Visual Studio. Something.
More or less, but XAML files are only visual, while Flutter, Swift UI, and FMXer actually lets you also write code.
No, you can add a lot of different bindings, and maybe, and this, like writing these bindings almost like a code, because sometimes it's too complicated.
I'm not very expert of XAML files, I have to say that, but
let's continue with the FMXer concept.
FMXer is actually following this approach. So you are not designing anything at design time. You are composing macro components that are provided with the framework. The different thing from Flutter and Swift UI is that as I'm a pragmatic programmer, you can still plug in any frame or form you want. So if you want to actually design a custom frame, you can do that exactly as you did and use it exactly as if it was a macro component of the framework. And you can build your own macro component as well. Everything is just FireMonkey and TFrameStand and TFormStand. That is the alter ego of TFrameStand for forms, for FireMonkey forms. So I think it's a nice approach because having macro components, including forms, means that your views are very consistent visually. They look the same. So if they look the same, if they have floating buttons in the same place with the same animations or effects, the user feel the UI as friendly, as already known, even if the application is large. I mean, it doesn't mean if you have 50 different views because they all look the same. They are familiar to the user. At the same time, you retain the...
A little bit later, can you show us this concept, share a screen and show us some application with this concept? Not now, but maybe after a couple of, let's say, subjects.
Yes, sure. I've built a demo application recently for a company in Italy about legal invoicing. It is just a prototype, but it's I think it shows the concept that FMXer is very it makes the developer very productive in a small amount of time. And the result is good looking without much effort. So you can focus on the application core. That's a huge advantage.
Okay, in this case, we will move to this subject a little bit later, but now for me, and let's say I have this question for our clients and from the developers. You mentioned about their let's say notation and let's say the standard of how the application should look like for Android and for iOS. But Delphi and Embarcadero tell us that you have a cross-platform tool, and you can use one code base for everything, like for iOS and for Android. But if for Android, we use material design pattern, for iOS, it should be a little bit different. What we have to do in this case, how we can implement one application for these both platforms?
Well, what I think is that the two main mobile platforms are not, there has been a time they were very different. Now they seems to be converging in some visual approach. However, if you have a FireMonkey application that is a multi-device application, you can have a very different strategies to adapt the UI and behavior to the final target platform. I mean, for example, using TFrameStand, if you design and architect your application, as I said before, using data modules for application logic that is 99% shared across different platforms. It depends on the application, but if it's a business application like dealing with data and remote API and the like, most of the code is actually shared without any effort. Then you have the UI. The UI is where conventions are different, and you can choose to apply different FireMonkey styles well, Embarcadero provides the standard platform styles for iOS and Android, but you can choose other styles. And at the same time, if you have divided your application into frames, you have an option to use different frames for the same view. So let's say you have with the same code, because most of the code is inside the data modules. That's not changing. And if data modules are properly divided as much as possible from the frames, it is not that hard to have different frames implementing the UI for the same data and code that you have in the data modules. So for, let's say you have I think I have I'm not sure I have a demo right here, but you can have your application showing a certain frame, and you can inherit another frame from that and make it very different. For example, if the first frame is perfect for Android, you can inherit that frame, change the UI in order, for example, to have things that on Android are on the top part of the view. Sometimes they go on the bottom part of the view, or you may have to hide some elements like the back button on Android because the user is very familiar with using a gesture to push. That was a physical button at very first Android devices, the back button. On my Pixel is now just a gesture to move your finger very close to the border of the display. And on iOS, this doesn't work. So you have to show a physical button. Things like that, you can change easily, even at design time, in a different frame class that is inherited. So if there's some code in this UI level, that is what many people would call the view model level, you can retain that and have a single source code base, but different view definitions. It will be the TFrameStand that will allow you to switch from one class to the other when it's the actual time to show the frame. So you can simply write, there's an event handler in TFrameStand that will allow you to, when you're asked for a certain frame class, to switch that class with another one, maybe a descendant one. Everything works because the frames are not tied at implementation level with the data module and, for example, a data set that may sit on the data module, but using live bindings or the messaging system to communicate from the data module to whatever and one or more listeners for the message, you can actually swap between this or that frame implementation. This is actually a game changer because you can focus on your application and then simply split the parts you really want to make different on a specific platform and the like. This very same mechanism to switch from one class to another can be declined also with other criteria. So for example, if you want that your application should show a different UI for whatever reason, like today is Friday, or we are in a certain part of the day, you can very easily. And that, for example, I have a customer that implemented night and day mode in their own application this way. So when you ask for a frame to be shown, the TFrameStand looks at the clock and says, okay, let's get the light version of the frame or the dark version of the frame.
Very interesting, very interesting. In this case, maybe we right now can switch to your demo, because it's even for me, it's very interesting how it works.
Okay, let me check if I can share my virtual machine. This is my Delphi 11.1 application. And what I want you to see is my TFrameStand. This is the very basic demo, not this one, but this one, where you can see the FrameStand component. There's a button on my main form. The button will simply have this code that is like, please TFrameStand1 build an instance of T-weight frame. I think I can enlarge a bit the font. It's easier.
We just created a new form and put in it one component.
Yes, it's just you can.
And okay, and what it will give us? Yeah.
Yes, you can. Well, one way to get TFrameStand is through get it, Embarcadero package manager.
Basically, now it
and
the last version
otherwise
is available. The last or 1.8 version is already available.
Yes, let's see how this is listed. TFrameStand is just been updated, and what you can see is that the component. Oops, I dropped the component accidentally. It's a simple component. It's a non-visual component. It has some events and some properties. The component is covered in one chapter of my FireMonkey book, or you can have a look at some resources on the GitHub page of TFrameStand. However, the basic functionality is that you can ask a FrameStand instance to build an instance of a frame that you can design. It is a simple FireMonkey frame. It has nothing special. It has some components on it, but it's really a standard frame. And ask the FrameStand to use that instance inside another FireMonkey component. If you don't specify a parent object, it will go on the form. Then you can spot some code here running some task in the background. I've used some sleep codes just to simulate some heavily computation tasks. You can update the frame, obviously keeping in mind that you have to understand threading, because we are running this code in a different thread with respect to the main thread. And when you have finished, you can ask the FrameStand to hide and close the instance. So if you run this demo,
is this my new frame can communicate with my main form?
The frame doesn't know anything about the form, but given when you ask the FrameStand to build and show a new instance, you get a reference to what is called the TFrameInfo data structure that holds a reference to the frame. So the form can actually call the frame, and TFrameStand has also a built-in dependency injection layer to act the other way around, meaning that if you need to know from the frame's code, if you need to have a reference to the parenting object or to the TFrameStand that actually initiated the view, you can. It is inside some other more advanced demos, but you can get back a reference to the context. So if I click on my button, you'll see that the frame is actually shown, an animation is running, and my application is still very responsive. I'm not blocking the UI. That's because the long time operations are performed in a secondary task. But at the same time, what you can see is that there's no code here starting the animation. There is a FireMonkey animation in the frame definition. It's this one. Is a floating animation that will animate the rotation angle of the gear from 0 to 360, I think in a second, and then loop inside that. Who's actually starting that application? There's no code starting animations in the frame. It is the TFrameStand that actually looks inside the frame and defines an animation matching a naming convention you can tweak if you like. It will automatically trigger the animation. And this is very handy because a part of what we were saying at the beginning of this interview is that we have to switch from a synchronous programming pattern to an asynchronous programming pattern. And one thing that developers find difficult is to find in this new paradigm, where is the right moment to do things like if I'm starting a long time consuming operation, when it's time to start something that visually instructs the user that something is going wrong, and when it is time to stop it. It is not so trivial to properly respond to events when the events are asynchronous. So having something that automatically can trigger this is a huge advantage for the developer.
Am I correct?
Another,
just a second.
Let me show you.
Okay, continue, please.
I want to show you a different demo that is quite significant in the history of TFrameStand. This is the material button demo, and what you can see here is that I can
have
show
a little delay, like you. You already said something, but the image come a little bit later. But okay, everything is clear, but it is what it is.
There's a bit lag.
Mm-hmm.
So you're what are you looking at now? The button is shown or not?
Application. The application is running. Yes, a red button with pencil.
Now I'm clicking hide. So maybe there's a bit, it is lagging a bit.
Yeah.
What I wanted to show is that, do you think is understandable or not? Is too much lag?
I can say that I already saw all these demos, and of course, people can download the demo and run it, and it will hide like with animation, as I know. It's very beautiful, yeah. By the way, this showing and hiding all these components, is it like some animation like standard animation from FireMonkey, or it's somehow implemented and uses TFrameStand?
Everything is from FireMonkey. So these are the standard FireMonkey animations. This is the triggering system that is inside TFrameStand. is that there's a algorithm looking for animations instances, and you can trigger them. There's one main concept that we skipped so far, that is the concept of stand. And the TFrameStand is a composition of a stand and a frame. The frame is what you've seen so far. It's just a FireMonkey frame. The stand is a composition of FireMonkey visual elements that you can have in between the parent object and the actual frame you are showing. This composition enables you to provide a way that you can use to show your frame, and also means that you can change this way without changing the frame. So you have a chance to show the same content in a different manner. And this is another addition to your developer toolbox, because as I'm showing here you can read slide from down to up, and you can see this button coming from the bottom of the form. But if you change this combo from slide right to left, you will see the same content, the very same content, shown to the user through a different stand, and the animation are buried into the stand. So this means that you actually can change the way you are showing components or frames, or even the whole view, without effort, without changing the view definition. Well, that's a memory leak. It's not my fault, but there's a patch coming for that.
No, you mean that if we are building anyway, again, some navigation and let's say application tree with all these forms, we use stand. We define how this frame should, let's say, appear on our application, like from right to left, something like correct?
Yes, the stands are exactly this concept, a way you interpose between the final destination of the frame and the frame itself. Mm-hmm. And they are defined through FireMonkey style definitions. So for example, we can have a look at how the slide center stand has been defined. And as you can see, there's a style, a T-line component from FireMonkey shapes, implementing this thing that at some point comes up in the middle of the view, and the button slides from this line as it's appearing like a zip line or the like. And how this can be done? Through a naming convention. So every style definition, we have 3 here, should have one element that is named container. That will be the place my actual frame will be placed when I ask the FrameStand to show this frame with this stand. So the stand gets materialized, the frame gets materialized, and they are stitched together using the convention that the frame should go inside the container. You can spot here the animations that will slide the container from left to right, and the other way around when you hide the composition. One nice thing is that given stands are purely visual definitions, you can preview them even at design time. So, for example, you can see here the slide center. You can ask at design time to the component editor provided with TFrameStand to preview the stand with a placeholder frame. This red one is just a placeholder frame, but you can change the stand and preview the effect you will get at runtime.
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay.
Okay. In this case, I just want to summarize like some batch of information. If I'm like a Delphi developer, want to start develop my cross-platform mobile application, I can create new project and set up and download a TFrameStand component. After that, for example, main form, it will be like, let's say, like a core form without maybe any UI, but it will contain, for example, like a heart and logic for my navigation, where I will just put my TFrameStand component and implement navigation in one method. It means that I will create, for example, my necessary frames like privacy policy, for instance, main form, about application, some feature lists, and inside, and it will be like just a frames. And in my main form I will have a method like a procedure where I will, depending on some navigation panel, will just show this my frames with appropriate content and components and UI. Correct?
Yes, let's try to do this. So I've created a new FireMonkey application, empty application. I've dropped the FrameStand instance. We can call this main form. We can make it resemble a mobile application. Then we can simply create a new frame, individual files, FireMonkey frame. We will call this frames.first view. We can, for example, set the name of this to first view frame. We can add, let's say, a label. Top. Let me change the font a bit. Let me make it a bit like hello world and align it to the center. Okay, and let a triangle, or sorry, a rectangle somewhere, just to have a kind of content. We can align it to the client and provide some margins. Like this. Okay, so this is my first frame. What I can do is on my main form, on the onCreate event, ask my FrameStand1 to create and show a new instance of my frame. Of course, I have to add the unit to see the type. And it is the first view frame. All the arguments are optional, so that's all. And if I run my application, I should see my main form showing my frame. I forgot one thing. Frames have the align property, and I want my frame to fill its container. So I should select client here to the align property of the frame. And now my view is shown in my form, and it is actually my frame. So if you look at it, it's just an empty form with a single line of code asking another thing to provide a view and show it. Okay.
Okay. And yes, and
so
if I want,
for example,
if I want to add more complexity, I will just, for material design, I will add a bottom main menu to the bottom of my application, for instance, and for the top, on the top, like a top panel, it will be like a return if I do not have, or for instance. But yes, for Android we have this buttons in the in the bottom of the arrow form. Yes, let's show how we can switch between two frames and how it will look like.
Okay, so let's say you have a flow, a common title bar. Well, of course, you can. It is very hand-on now, so you should remove frames and the like. But just to have an idea, you can add a label here, set its auto size, set it should be centered, and have a bigger font. Have if you leave the word rough off, it should be better. Title. Okay, let's provide a decent name for title label, and this one is top rectangle. This one is the bottom flow layout, and we can add, I think buttons should be good enough inside my flow layout. But I think, okay, it's working. Let's say we put this aligned left, and we should say not to keep the platform default size. I like it to have a different A. Well, okay. So this one will show the first view, this other one, the second view. So one thing I want to do is not to have my form create to provide the first view. I will add different code. I will probably need the second view frame. And what? I don't want my view to go in my form. I probably want to define where to put my views. So a simple thing to do is to add a T layout component here and align it to client. And now it is clear where I want my view to be shown. We can call it content layout. And when we decide to show the frames, we can specify that we want them to be parented there. Same here. As I said, I'm going to need a second frame, FireMonkey frame. I will save it like my second view. This is my second view frame. It is aligned client. And this one may have a different content, like, I mean, a list view, showing some data, and the subsequent question will be where the data should be. So I can add a data module to my application. Okay, I will call it data.main or local. This is the local data module. And I think I can use a in-memory table just to provide some data. I should be able to load it from sample data provided with Delphi. Well, it's the wrong version, but let me like employees. Okay, so I now have a data set. And what? I can say my second view will know the data module. I have to check that the data module is created way before my frames, but that's the case because I have my main form, I have my data module, and the frames are not automatically created. So it will be created when I click on my button. So that's fine. I tend to have the data module created even before the forms most of the time, but it's not necessary here. So now that I added the data module to my second view, I can use live binding and link my list view to my data set. So this is a very effective way. I mean, I'm doing RAD here, but what will happen is that once I've added the reference to the second view to the main form, this should compile and work. So if I click on button 1, I can see my first view inside my application, and it's that it is sizing with respect to my application. If I click on button 2, I will see my second view. But my other components are still there. And what happens if I click again button 1? I will create a new instance of my first view that is shown on top. So I'm actually layering views one on top of the other. The only difference is that...
But you can notify previous frame and it will close itself, and you just will show only necessary frame, first frame.
Yes, there are many ways to do this. Or you can even ask the TFrameStand to let me check a second. To try, because the TFrameStand actually holds the list of the shown frames. So if you change this code to this one, you have a chance to say, please create a new one if you don't already have an instance. Otherwise, it will reuse the instance. So if you say, yes, please create if you don't have this frame. Otherwise, please reuse the previous instance. And if you switch from this code to this one, also for the second view. Oh.
At least it will be faster in some cases.
This, why it's complaining? Yes, sure. The TFrameStand will automatically, well, sorry, I forgot one thing. The get frame info will provide you an instance, but you will have to show it explicitly because it's the other the other method has a shortcut to also show the frame info. You have the same behavior, but I mean, you can notice that if you select one of the rows and you click on button 2, it is no more creating a new instance. It is actually the same instance. What we can do is to do this thing that is lFrameInfo if lFrameInfo is visible, then lFrameInfo dot bring, there should be a bring to front or the like. Otherwise, we simply show it and it should be on top. Same here, and you should see you should see the view swapping one to the other. So it should work. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here. But it should work. If it's visible, then bring it to front. Otherwise, show it. It should work. That's something I'm missing here. Never do. I should never do demos on the fly.
No, anyway, I can add that it's a really,
however,
that's a fantastic because it's a real you mentioned RAP, but for people maybe who don't know this term, it's like rapid application development. You added your RAP with this TFrameStand component to existing Delphi RAP, let's say. It's a really fast to I can say that it's a really fast how we can develop new application, mobile application. What about?
Yes, one other thing, if you move.
Yeah, continue.
If you want to push it a little bit farther, you'll see that there's another thing that TFrameStand does very well. And it is to provide you a way to have a responsive UI in a way that we are all used to see in web development. Like this is a simple application. You can spot them on the bottom part, like an indicator of what kind of viewport I'm using. Like it's a very small device, a medium device, a large device, and the like. And this one is an icon showing you the first functionalities. It is a list of orders data, more or less like I did before. And the fun fact is that it is not so hard to implement responsive views with the TFrameStand. And you can see that the things change. It changes the frame you're looking at. And this thing is done, as I was saying before, using a single main form. You have a data module with order data, and then you have the dashboard with the functionalities you want. It's like a launch menu, and then you have frames that are inherited one from the other. I'm sorry, this is because it's written with a previous Delphi version. Should show the frame nonetheless. It's this one that is, please don't crash. I think we should, can you, I think it's gone. It is gone.
Anyway, as usually, a lot of useful information. But you see, we don't have a lot of time. It's not just a lot of time. We cannot put everything in just one session, and that's why maybe 2-3 minutes and how FMXer will improve, because as I can see, even right now with TFrameStand, we can do almost everything. That's really great. But how FMXer will also improve this our application, and what it will do?
Yes. Well, FMXer is built on top of TFrameStand and TFormStand. This is, if you look at the very first demo, you will see it has almost no code. And the idea is that you initialize an FMXer application by having a blank FireMonkey application, putting a TFormStand on top of that. And then you call in the form create navigator use FormStand1. And then you can define routes, basing the routes on a macro component. And for example, we can use this scaffold form. That is a form that many of you will recognize being more or like the standard for mobile application. It is a form with a top bar, with a shadow, with a title, with a band here to host floating action buttons, and with some other functionalities. But the thing is that you don't have to know about the scaffold form. You simply use it. You provide a name for your route. Then you provide a function, an anonymous function, to configure this scaffold form for your own application. So you will provide a title. You will instruct the form that its main content is provided by another component from the framework that will allow the content to scroll vertically. And the content of the vertical scrolling frame is a column form that is a vertical composition of different UI elements. And then you have this code defining what's inside the column. So I have a column, the column is closed inside the scrolling component, and everything is the content of my scaffold form. This is the content definition. Then I will add to my scaffold form a couple of action buttons. And that's it. When the application starts, I simply have to instruct my navigator to route to that route definition by name. So if I run my application, what I see here is my scaffold form. There's a styling mechanism to provide default colors. That's why it's not blue here. But as you can see, this is my form, my scaffold form with my title. I have these two floating action buttons that are there just because I've written these 3 lines of code. What happens if I click on my A action button is that I'm asking my scaffold form to show a snack bar with a transient message for 3 seconds. So if I click on A, I can see my message. And if I click on the X button, I will close the route. So everything will go away. Inside, I have my content that is given by a custom frame with a button and a circle. I have 3 of that frames inside a column. The column is closed in a vertical scrolling component. And that's it. This is my application. What my custom frame does, it's written without even knowing that we are inside the FMXer framework. So it's up to you, and you can use whatever you want. This is the FMXer concept. It is very easy to use. but it requires you to switch from a standard programming style to this declarative approach. I just want to quickly show
it's like
one
a container.
demo.
Let's say it's like a container. Yes, where you declare how your application should look like from which frames it should consist of, and yes, but you as a developer don't think about how to place this button with this X, how to move it. Everything FMX will do.
Yes, and if you like to customize all your scaffold forms, what you have to do is just to provide your own scaffold form, and everything will change, and you have very flexibility. So this application here is built with FMXer, and let me check if I can show you how it works. I have to get the, let me check a second. I had my, okay. Here. I have to actually log in because it shows some data, and even the spinner UI is customizable and is built with FMXer. So this is my scaffold form, exactly the same scaffold form as before. And we have different views, again, built with the scaffold form itself. So I can have action buttons going through different views and back. I can select an entry from a list, ask for a different views that will use a browser to show some HTML data, and then we can go back. We should be, it's a browser, it's a bit laggy, but that's it. And the definitions are very straightforward because these different views, like the change password views and the like, are all defined with my FMXer structure. So you can spot the scaffold form here and the procedure that is actually configuring the scaffold form, exactly as in the very first demo. We have a number of components already there, like the T-list view frame, but you can build your own. You can use data modules to perform network requests or use local data on board of the device, and everything that Delphi enables you to do. So this is an approach that simplifies writing large applications by different team members with the same look and feel, retaining the same look and feel by design.
I think that's a great ground if you want to start developing your mobile application. With TFrameStand, if you need more control, you can start using TFrameStand to develop in your application. But if you want to go like a little bit on the next level of the abstraction, you can use FMXer, which will much more help you to build like, let's say, a ready application, but maybe you won't know what is under the hood, but you have a lot of possibilities for customization anyway. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you stop sharing your screen, because maybe we have this lag with this.
Yes.
Okay, I think that it was really useful, because as for me, like maybe 1 year ago, maybe I didn't find, but I couldn't find appropriate videos, like where to get the good start, how to start from nothing. And here I know I have a knowledge, for instance, how to start from nothing, because I can use your projects. Am I correct that TFrameStand and FMXer are available on GitHub and they're totally free for commercial use?
Yes.
Also? Yes, it's a year like like one of your missions, like to be a part of this our Delphi community. It's really great, and I'm glad that I know you personally, not only like online.
Same for me, but I just wanted to say that my open source project that mainly are TFrameStand, FMXer, and my Mars REST library are open source and freely available, just because it's a way for me to give back to the Delphi community what I've got in these years. I've learned a lot of things from so many people out there. And I thought that having an open source project would be a nice way to give something back, and also to learn how to actually deliver projects to other developers. That is not so trivial. Yeah, it's something that is not so trivial to do.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that we have to end our today's interview, because we can speak. You see that we just took a mixer just 3 minutes, but I'm afraid that you know that we have such a practice that people won't be able to watch too long videos. Usually it's better to split them on different videos. And that's why I want to add that, guys, if you have any question to Andrea, anyway, I think you can find him via GitHub, or even you can ask questions to this video. It will be on the YouTube, of course, and you can ask a question in the comments, and we will share and transfer them to Andrea, of course, if he will time to answer on them, because he has his own work and tasks. And I want to say thank you very much, Andrea, for such useful session, because right now we even have a tool. If somebody will ask me how to start, I will share and send to him the link to this our video.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Yes. I hope it won't be like an hour the last video. Because it's very comfortable to do with such things. I hope you will attend our next interviews and sessions. If you want to say something to our Delphi community, you can do that. Because you already said about it, you added this, like you give something back to the community with your project. That's really great.
I've seen some of your interviews, and I really like this project you're doing. And I just want to say, everybody, Delphi rocks.
Yeah,
and,
Delphi rocks. Yes, let's finish our session on this great words. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. See you on our next sessions and interviews and episodes. Thank you. Thank you for watching.